Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to a Blake Scholar of Magic video. Today, this is a Meria Scholar of the Antiquity EDH deck tech, and we have our commander here right in the middle, Meria the Scholar of Antiquity. Let me just kind of angle this up so you can see a little bit better. Perfect. So Meria Scholar of Antiquity is a 1 colorless, 1 red, 1 green, legendary creature, Elf Artificer. Tap an untapped non-token artifact you control, add green. Tap 2 untapped non-token artifacts you control. Exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn. There's a couple lessons to be learned about this commander. Just looking at it from face value and for playing it for about like over a year and a half now with just different iterations of decks. I feel like what you're going to have an abundance of is green mana. You're going to have plenty of that at your disposal. So it's kind of up to you to utilize your red mana kind of sparingly, but also balancing the ability to basically impulse draw off the top of your deck. That can be very good, especially if you're playing in like Landfall synergy. Like you can tap for those things readily for mana, but you might want to save them. You might want to put 2 things off the side, especially if you're like trying to hit lands off the top of your deck and like kind of take a card off the top of your deck. So leaving those artifacts open can, lend you that things like, turn 3 or turn 4. Instead of just busting out and using all my artifacts for green mana, maybe I'll keep 2 to the side. Perhaps maybe we'll have our like reality type chip effects, like an Augur of Autumn, for instance, or Oracle Moldiah. And maybe we play the land off the top, and maybe we brick on the next one. Then we can go ahead and tap those artifacts, bring that basically bring that card off the top of our library, and look for more lands. So that's what's a very cool, interesting aspect about Meria. And that pretty much covers what she's utilized for. I'd say big mana stuff, and kind of manipulating the top of your deck for your use. Definitely where she shines. So I've organized this into some piles here. The first pile we'll just kind of go over is the creatures, and then we'll kind of get into these other ones that I have here off to the side. So let's just get these ones going. So typically, like at the start of a deck, if I'm playing Gruul, I want to like have a certain amount of like mana accelerants for the 1 spot. These are creatures that will just produce mana on their own, or if they meet a certain criteria, they can also create things such as treasures that will also help us accelerate into like a faster Meria, for instance. So Ragavan is just a really good 1-drop. It turns on cards like Mox Amber. It's also very good with equipments that also have combat damage. If you can get like a Ragavan like with double strike, you can start generating more additional treasures upon Ragavan hitting for combat damage. And also what's great about Ragavan is when it connects with an opponent, you can also exile the top card of their library, and you may play it this turn. You would have to utilize your treasures if you didn't have the colors for that particular spell. So that's how Ragavan works. It's very, very awesome card, of course. Classic 1-drop. The Lighted Halfling kind of reminds me that I probably should put a Cavern of Souls in this deck. And that's fine. We definitely have like probably a slot or 2 for a Cavern. But the Lighted Halfling is amazing because basically our legendaries become uncounterable when we tap this for mana. So it has a tap effect to add colorless by itself. We can also tap for any color for our legendary spells. And additionally, that spell can't be countered. Oof, what a bomb. What a great card. Nice toughness too, the 1/2, of course, for a 1-drop. Birds of Paradise. This is just that nice one that's just going to produce red or green on demand. Just very versatile for us, of course. Fintward Elf. This is just like our typical, prototypical elf. You have Elvish Mystic, Llanowar Elf, Fintward Elf. This is the one I wanted to play. It's just fine. Just cool art, and it'll just kind of fit that ability for us to get ahead. These cards are so good. They're extraordinarily good. Any of the elves are just so very good. They just get you ahead. They're very hard to deal with. Really gets you accelerated compared to the other colors. It's probably their best form is just these kind of 1 mana mana dorks that are just really kind of basically, in essence, put an additional land on the battlefield that is summoning sick and start producing for mana the next turn. This is probably one of the better mana dorks that we have. in particular, it doesn't tap for mana, but we have what you would call fetch lands, for instance, like a card like Misty Rainforest. And this is a card where you can play, and then you can crack this and go ahead and search for an additional land and put that onto play. So each instant of that will turn on the Cobra each time a land comes on the battlefield, so it'll produce some mana. So if you can find the sequences where you're, putting multiple fetch lands on the battlefield at once, this thing will start producing like up to 2 to 3 mana in a turn cycle, and that's very good for its rate. And it can be mana of any color, so it's also very good. Also, a Tangled Florahedron kind of goes hand in hand. When we're thinking about landfall, we really want to kind of maximize that with our creatures too. We want options, and the Tangled Florahedron can be that land if we want it to be a land. It could also be like a mana dork if we wanted it to be a mana dork. Just a really good kind of like flex card. I really like the Tangled Florahedron here. Okay, Bristly Bill, the Spine Sower. This one is a great landfall card. And it's just really good at like pumping up our creatures, really rewarding us for playing lots of fetch lands in our deck. It can also do the things we want it to do. We want to be able to attack into our opponents. We also want to have our creatures like reach a certain level of power. When we do that, we can, play cards like Great Henge. We can get into things like that, which are, meet a criteria of power, even like a Rishkar's Expertise. We want our creatures to get a little power because they turn on our other cards. My dogs, this video is going to be great because they're having a great time out there. I guarantee it. It's going to be good. Springheart and Antuco. This is the one where we can actually, this is a newer card, and from Modern Horizons 3. This one's really interesting. So you can imagine like putting this like on like a Lotus Cobra, for instance, basically enchanting our Lotus Cobra with this card. And then when a land comes on battlefield, we can pay 1 in our green, and we can make a token. A Springheart and Antuco is attached to a creature control. If you do, create a token. So you can make like multiple Lotus Cobras. It'd be fantastic. So that's also a very interesting card. Obviously, want to utilize it for our non-legendaries. Additionally, if we don't have this attached to a thing, you can just create a 1/1 green insect token anyways. So that's kind of cool too. Okay, so that's if it's attached. Very well. That's the criteria. So we're going to be definitely attaching that to something. All right, here's the Fanatic. Woo, baby. Look at that. Amoket. Snake Druid. Ooh, that one's a good one, guys. This one's always tapping for 4 green. I feel like especially with like our Bristly Bill, just kind of putting in work and giving us like that extra nudge there, here and there. And our equipments that kind of nudge up our creatures too, like Meria, like to get to 4 power. This thing is just a beast, and it's really good. You can have like sequences where you get into a card like a Vorinclex or like a Nyxbloom Ancient. You could probably play either one of those, but I do have Vorinclex. But you could even play a card like Nyxbloom, and this thing would also be turned on with a Nyxbloom too. You'd be producing mega amounts of mana. So, whether you're casting big things or, you're getting rewarded when you cast those big things, this is just an excellent card. That Eternalize is really good too. It's like sneakily good because it turns itself on, right? So if someone like perhaps mills you for whatever reason and, on an earlier turn cycle, and you get this into the graveyard, it might be your best bet to just kind of get that value, play it from your graveyard, and then, start producing like a lot of mana all of a sudden. So yeah, we just love the Fanatic. Just a great one here. This is like probably one of the better Meria cards. What's also good about this, we want to build our graveyard to an extent. So the Vault of Wonderglyph kind of lets us like look through our cards, like can loot some cards into the graveyard. We also can tap this thing for mana. So it kind of serves the purpose of both of those actions at once, which is really a good aspect for us, especially with cards like with us, like when we're playing Lumra, So juicing up that graveyard is really nice. And we'll have some Crucible of World effects too, where we play lands from the graveyard too, so that's also very helpful. Okay, so here's Lizard Blades, and Lizard Blades is just also one of those fantastic creature equipments. This thing can be suited up to one of your creatures, or you can put like even like swords on this thing. And you can put some really nasty swords on this, and you can get a lot of value from hitting in twice, let's be honest. Get some really good stuff there with Lizard Blades. All right, here's a Sousa, Lost But Seeking. Just move over a little bit. Oh, much better. This card is the bomb. It's just like one of those cards that, you know, we're playing enough lands, I'd say, like enough where we can like have that Azusa, and then she can come in and, you know, play like 2 lands immediately. I do feel like we have the potential for that in this particular kind of deck. I think we're running about 46 lands, but we're not a typical Azusa deck where you're going to run like, you know, 60 lands, because I feel like what's good about this deck is it has a lot of good ways to like play things from the top of the deck. And I think that's what's missing in mono green, like cards like Experimental Frenzy, that like when you gas out, you can keep playing things from the top. So that's a pretty big card for us, like the Experimental Frenzy. And of course, we'll play the Augur of Autumn, Oracle of Mandaya. All those cards that let you play from the top of your deck also help out this card immensely. The Crucible effects like Crucible of Worlds and the Ancient Green Warden also really work well with this card. So you may play 2 additional lands on your turn. Fantastic. So basically we're bridging like the mono green powerhouse with like the Gruul powerhouse here, in which is a match made in heaven in my eyes. Okay, so then we have Nissa, the Resurgent Animist, and this is an amazing card. I feel like this thing is like glued to you when you play in Brawl. I swear it's in like the top 20 cards like every game. Like the shuffler is fine. So you're gonna see this a lot, and it's so good. You know, playing like a fetch land off of this, and like seeking out an elf or an elemental in our deck from that, and just doing that fun stuff, getting you that gas is just amazing. This and a Lotus Cobra is really when stuff gets really interesting. Be producing like so much mana at once. Okay, here's the Scooty Boy, the Scoot Swarm. Very, very green archetype centered that's kind of seen all over in all your casual games everywhere. It's just a great card. It's just going to multiply itself, and we have a lot of instances of being able to meet the criteria for creating lots of land drops. So that's always very good for creating multiples of those Scooties. Here's one of those kind of cards that enables that kind of that land gas flowing and continue to flow. This is one of those cards that you're never really sad about, guys. And maybe it's just going to be like a permanent staple in my 99 for my green decks, because I don't know if I've ever been really sad about casting an Augur like an early part of the game and being able to like play from the top of my deck. It's just, there's nothing really like it, the amount of value you can get from there. Yeah, it gives you, it kind of frees you up, right? So that's a great card. Tyler's Provisioner, just to be able to generate the treasures along with our land drops. Very interesting to you know, create the treasures for us, because we do create a few amount of treasures with other creatures as well, and they're just, and you can also create foods as well. So yeah, we like creating treasures. We're not going to be like playing like Goldspan Dragon or anything. It's just going to be getting us ahead a little bit. So those are always decent. All right, here's the Kazandu Mammoth, and this one is basically the multi-face land card, where this could be played as a tap land or as a 3/3 elephant. And I do like that also flexibility once again, like where this can enable like a great henge type of aspect. It can enable like a big Rishgard's expertise, because each time a land enters the battlefield, the Kazandu Mammoth gets 2/2 until end of turn, or it can just be played as a land. So I really like that versatility. So basically the focus of this deck is double strike. So double strike and landfall. So we're gonna have like the Lizard Blades, Phyrexian Dragon Engine, and we'll also have the Slicer. And I'll play 3 swords. I'll play the Sword of Feast and Famine, the Sword of Forge and Frontier, and the Sword of Fire and Ice. So any of the swords on any of these double strikers is just so good to get that double value, just the double pings and the double combat triggers are just so big. So this like card, especially with like a Sword of Fortune Frontier, you can imagine with Landfall is very good because we're going to have 2 additional land drops to be possible upon that. Additionally, like even like a card like a sort of a Feast and Famine, where after the combat's over, we get to utilize the lands again, you know? So, I mean, it just freezes up. It does kind of all the stuff we want it to do. Okay, here's the Oracle of Moldiah. Also, just like another fantastic one. Gives us those additional land drops. Lets us play with the top card of our library, both revealed, and we can play land cards from the top, and we get to play an additional land. So Meria really likes that. What would you say? Like the top of the library kind of stuff, because she's able to like cast things like, you know, quite frequently, and we're just always trying to keep up with that intake. So the more we can play from the top of our library is really kind of helpful. Here's Karlach for when we get into those kind of combat situations where we're just, you know, very excited about, you know, having all our swords and double strikers going. We can create situations where we're getting like really ahead on value with Karlach and getting those extra combats. Here is Ashaya. So Ashaya is the Soul of the Wild. And this is probably one of the better landfall cards, I guess. Just the fact that its power is equal to the number of lands, which is also counts the creatures once this thing comes down, is pretty strong. And then, of course, all our non-tokens become lands when they enter the battlefield, so they trigger landfall. So it's just like a really nasty card. There's also like certain cards that like kind of void the interaction of certain cards. Like, for instance, there's like certain cards that like are not able to remove lands, for instance. And someone might be playing a Wrath type effect, and it may seem as at first like there's certain Wraths I think that don't hit when Ashaya is on the battlefield because all the things are lands. So I'll have to look into that, but it's happened to me before when I was playing against Ashaya, and I played some sort of effect that I thought would have, you know, taken out their creatures. But since they were lands, they were just stayed there. And it was like, what just happened? That was crazy. Like all their stuff is still there. And I felt like it's kind of a jackass, but it happens. Okay, so here's the Vorinclex. This kind of fills out our deck, and it's a nice 5-drop. It keeps that lands going. We can just put forests into our hand immediately upon entering the battlefield. I also love Vorinclex for its milling ability, and putting some mega creatures on the battlefield that we mill for that turn cycle. So the Grand Evolution is kind of a slot machine, and, you know, mill 10 cards, maybe we'll hit like a hoof and an Ashaya or something, you know, and then we're having a good time. Stuff like that, you know, where that chapter 1 is really fun. Of course, that's 8 mana to pump into to flip it. So that's a cool card, of course. And just a 6/6 in general, right? Just a badass 6/6 right there with trample and reach. Here's Slicer. This is one of those other cards we're just going to want to put like a sword on. And I believe how it works is because we control the sword. And when this thing hits, I think we get all those benefits too, which is a really interesting like interaction. Like, you know, if we're hitting the Sword of Fortune Frontier, for instance, or, you know, hitting with the Sword of Feast and Famine, I believe we can like basically utilize those targets. So this thing can hit a lot. Our opponents are in turn cycles, and we can get the benefits. It has like swords or equipments on it. So it's really cool. All right, here's Lumra. Lumra. Blake, I've done well for you in the last couple of days on the arena. Yes, I have, Blake. Lumra is so good. This thing is good, like even just if you're playing in the beginning, you're still going to get a couple lands. You know, you're probably going to get like two lands maybe. You know, you're never going to completely brick on this thing. So I like it. I'm a fan. We're going to get a couple fetch lands in there, you know, into our, you know, if we have this in our opener, we're going to make sure that we put some lands into the graveyard just to start. And then hopefully when we cast this, you know, sooner than later, we're going to get a little extra value when we mill those cards. into our graveyard, hopefully get a couple more lands and, have a couple more lands come out at the same time. So Loomer is just a really cool card. Really good body too. You get the power and toughness based on the amount of lands you have. Here's the Ancient Green Warden. This is a really fantastic landfall payoff. We can also play lands from the graveyard, which is like a huge benefit as well. So love the Ancient Green Warden. This will just kind of double up all our landfall triggers. Like for instance, our Lotus Cobra will get, a little bit more, get an additional trigger. Our Scoot Swarms will get an additional trigger. So we'll read the verbiage. Reach, you may play lands from your graveyard. And has reach. If a land entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Sweet. So that would go ahead and trigger, like for instance, our Rampaging Ballast twice. That would be great. And this is a great landfall card. Give us a little power, right? Benefits us from keeping that land gas going. We really want to keep it going. And Meria, like I said, is really great for, keep those artifacts available. Don't necessarily always utilize if you don't have to, like if you can, maybe leave a red open and start using some of your green lands for casting spells, and maybe leaving like 2 of those artifacts open so you can like open up your top of your library in those circumstances, and keep that flowing, because you want to keep hitting those lands off the top of your deck. So Rampaging Ballast is just a great card. We get to create more 4/4 bodies. It's a 6/6 itself. So that's going to be a nice one for us, and we can kind of generate a lot of power on the battlefield. Of course, what is a landfall deck left without Mirog, the Fury of Akum? This thing just kind of solos games, especially in like a 1 versus 1 format. This is basically like your win con, because this thing comes on the battlefield, and you'll go through an attack cycle, and then after that you can start playing your lands and generating those extra combat steps. So that's kind of the nice interaction with that. You kind of have to be delayed, right? You can't just play a land before your combats, because then that's when it would start triggering these the landfall characteristics. So that's the verbiage. So yeah, you want to wait for that main phase, and then you can go ahead and continue to accrue combats as lands come in. You can basically, with some of these cards, like for instance, like a Sword of Forge and Frontier, that keeps accruing lands off the top of your deck, you can kind of just keep going and going and going. So kind of definitely a win con, like that's like kind of a 1-2 punch, for instance, like those two together. Avenger of Zendikar, just a great landfall card. It's just going to give us those plants, then they're going to get stronger as more lands come into play. Here's Vorinclex. You could play like a card like Nyxbloom Ancient too, if that's in your collection, but I just have this one. So we'll rock this one out. Gives us an additional mana source from when we tap our lands for mana, which is nice. Additionally, our opponent's lands get locked out too, so it's kind of an evil card. Very evil. So there's a Cityscape Leveler, some nice removal at the top. Want to keep some nice removal available for us at the top end for sure. And a finisher, so Craterhoof Behemoth. Cool suite of cards. Cool suite of creature cards, most definitely. Then you can kind of see what we're working with our artifacts. We have just like kind of that nice 0-drop start. Some nice kind of value cards here for Meria. And then it just kind of moves right into the Soul Ring. We get into our GTA. So lots of combat-orientated cards you'll see here that like benefit greatly from hitting a couple times. This one's especially good because you can remove charge counters so that creatures can't block, which is really, really good. You can even ramp a little by untapping a target land with a charge counter. So just fantastic stuff there. Here's the boots, Lava Spurt boots, fantastic. Little haste action. We have these like kind of treasure enablers that are really going to be good for our double strikers, especially. Get us ahead with lands and with treasures. Here's Prion Blade, Shadow Spear for the trample and lifelink. Beamtown Beatstick, is that a duplicate? Oh no, I can't have 2 of those. Blake, you try to get 2 Beamsticks in your deck, brother. Oh, they're both foiled too. What are the odds of that? Okay. That's fine. Let me see here. Do I have the Prying Blade in here as well? That's fine. I'll put like a Commander's Plate in there. We won't be sad about that, will we? All right, so let's keep it rolling, guys. Here's the mask. Oh, you know what? Also, even like a Sensei's Divining Top wouldn't be bad. Especially if we wanted to like kind of manipulate our library. I think that's probably the better choice, to be honest. Mask of Memory, just to get in that sweet draw discard and getting our land gas going and putting lands into our graveyard, which are good for us, and more cards into our hand for combat. Just a great card. Swiftfoot Boots, this is also just great for equipping more things to this like hexproof thing. You know, it's not like Lightning Greaves where you're just shroud out your creature, right? You can still utilize this and put stuff on the boots. Staff of Titania. So these are some sweet landfall cards. Sweet landfall artifact equipments that you really kind of don't see. These are mostly suggestions to me, so I don't see these on Brawl. But this one was suggested to me, and it's like, yeah, like let's go ahead and make, more Dryad creature tokens that counts as land, and yeah, we'll pump up the creature where this is attached to. It sounds good to me. Umezawa's Jite, also sweet. So that one's going to benefit from the combat damage, of course. Howling Mine, just for like absolute Meria gas. People like always say like, well, that's really good. Like that card is really, really good. Yeah, it's like it is really good because not only can I tap this for mana, I'm gonna get an additional card on my draw step each time. So it produces mana and draws me a card for that low cost continuously until it's removed or blown up, right? Sword of the Animist. There's another one where we're just going to be creating landfall with our artifacts. It's going to be fantastic. Sword of Forge and Frontier. Look at that card. It's so slick. But basically what this one does, it gives you pro red, pro green. And when it hits, it connects. You get to exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn, and you may play an additional land this turn. Fantastic. Sword of Feast and Famine. Equipped creature gets 2/2 and has protection from black and green. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card and you tap all the lands you control. That's pretty sweet. Sword of Fire and Ice. This is the one that once it connects, we draw and we get to do damage to any target. Fantastic protection from red and blue. So we got 3 swords in here we're very excited about. Crucible of Worlds. This is just that awesome card. We can tap this for mana. We can play lands from our graveyard with Meria. We can impulse draw with Meria. It does all the things we want it to do. Doors the Dern for that kind of cheeky effect. Is it the best slot? Maybe not. Perhaps like we should be rocking like a Sensei's Divining Top and a Commander Plate. That would probably be more responsible and probably better. But yeah, I'm going through this here, and I kind of was just filling in some cards here, but now looking at this, I kind of have an idea for what I want. I want to definitely include more 1s and 2s for Meria. She really likes those a lot. And Doors the Dern is very good, but I don't know if we're playing enough biggies for them. Really make it go. Great Henge, amazing card. Just draws you so many cards. It's amazing. It just ramps you too at the same time. Sylvan Library for an extraordinary amount of cards. We love that. Experimental Frenzy, so we can start playing from the top of our deck in those instances where we might gas out, and then we have this card just to keep that flowing from the top. And that's what it does. It's just lets you play from the top. It's like gives your library into your hand, basically. So we just love it with Meria. Rishkar's Expertise. This is just one of those other amazing cards where you can draw many cards by casting this, and then casting a spell with mana value 5 or less from your graveyard, or from your hand without paying its mana cost. Fantastic. And then Blasphemous Axe, so a little bit of an interaction there at that bottom end. Okay, fantastic. I have about 12 fetch lands in this deck. I feel that's kind of like where it's very responsible. I'd have to say, if I were you and you were getting into this, I'd probably be more inclined to, instead of playing like a Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds, I'd be playing these ones. I don't have them quite all in my collection, but these are amazing, especially with cards like Mirage, where this basically will sack itself right when it comes onto the battlefield. So if, like, for instance, you have like cards that are like enter and tap for whatever reason, like perhaps like a Lumra brought in a bunch of lands. These ones will just go fetch immediately. They're not affected by being tapped or not. They just hit the battlefield and they go fetch. So you can have like your Obscura storefront here and the other, whatever the other house was. And you're going to be all set there with like just like probably a suite of 4 of these. So these two, which obviously fetch the green and red sources, which are fantastic, Riveteer and Cabaretti. And then I believe, of course, one is called Obscura, and the other one might be like the Naya. I don't know. Well, that's Cabaretti. So yeah, but you want those 4 houses there for these lands, and you'll be all set. But those can go in for now. Of course, yeah, I think about 12 sources of fetches, like overall. So let me just kind of count these out for you so you can kind of see my thought process. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, about 12 fetches there. So that way we can play, not too many basics, but just enough to like make sure that we're hitting off of this and not fetching nothing, which would be not so good. We do have about, I believe, 12 hits off of this, so kind of divvy it up nicely with that. We have our Disciple here. These are just the amazing lands that we get to play. This one will sacrifice your highest power creature upon entering the battlefield, and you'll gain that much life and draw that many cards. It's very good. It can be played as a land as well for paying 3 life. Valakut, this will also just benefit us from like bringing mass amount of lands back on the battlefield at once, for instance, like with Illumra, or we can just start pinging people as mountains enter the battlefield as well. Urza Saga, so there's that. That's the really cool card that will help us make a construct. Also fetch up like a 1-costed artifact or 0-costed artifact and put it right on the battlefield for the chapter 3, so we like that as well. I'd like to bring this back too in certain circumstances. Nykthos for benefiting us for playing like just a 2-color deck, so sometimes we can, in good circumstances, like net some mana off of this, which would be nice. Shadow Skull Smashing, Turn Timber Symbiosis, the multi-face cards are just always very good. These ones are newer. The Stomp I have here for interaction. I feel like this one's a good choice. And Bridgeworth's Battle, those are just some really nice, like, Gruul and mono green, like, interactive land spells. I like them a lot. Shifting Woodland, so we can obviously build our graveyard. We can have this become like an experimental frenzy, for instance, to the end of turn and, start playing cards from the top of our deck. There's stuff we can, copy and kind of benefit from having this copy that certain thing until the end of turn, so we love that. Here's forests, so I think we have about 5 forests in this deck. We have the channel lands here, which are just very nice choices. Have an assortment of duels here, just the ones that pretty much don't penalize you too much. This one needs a criteria for 3 or more lands, but other than that, we're pretty much just getting in easy peasy. This is one of those cards that you can actually fetch with some of your fetch lands here. Commercial District and Stomping Ground kind of meet that criteria because they're mountain forest types, which is really nice. Then we have our Firelight Thicket, Grove of Burnwell. Just nice Gruul land cards. Lots of variety there. You could probably even play like City of Brass and, what is it called? Mana Confluence, but it's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect all the time. Here's a Command Tower, so there's that. Pathway, and then I believe I have like probably 4 here, 4 total forests, and then 5 mountains. So additional forests that we already went through. So that is the deck, guys. There's the lands there. Here's the artifacts and the creatures. So kind of get a little bit of slow-mo here for the deck. And I have tested it on Brawl. I've tested most of these cards. They're great. They're really great. I mean, it just needed like a finisher, like a Craterhoof. I feel having like at least one finisher is great. The Leveler seems like a great choice. I did have an Nyxbloom version on my Brawl. I put in Boring Class because I don't have an Nyxbloom in my collection. So it is an expensive card. It's like $30, $40. So, but all of these are just, you know, very cool. These are all just really, really sweet cards, guys. And yeah, I really encourage you if you want to like get a Meria. I think this is kind of like my prototypical Meria, and I think this kind of stood the test of time, like kind of this Landfall artifact synergy. You can get a little bit more Timmy if you want, like with the Goblin Welder and Goblin Engineers. That's when if you want to like start cheating things out, like you know, portals to Phyrexia, and that is a very cool way to go. I think that's kind of a little more high-powered, you know, version. That could be like the next step if you really wanted to kind of get into that. So otherwise, yeah, I'm just gonna kind of pull some of these out. I'm gonna definitely be getting some different options here. Basically, I have two cuts to go through. And I'm excited to really shore up that bottom end with a commander plate and Sensei's Divining Top. That will be fantastic. But yeah, this is it. This is it, guys. This is the sweet one right here. So I'll probably have the list up pretty soon, and it might take me like a day or two, but just bear with me. It'll go there if you're interested to kind of take a look at it. But it's pretty much just this pretty standard Landfall deck. I'd say it's more like just good gruel, good stuff gruel. And basically there might be games where you might not even really cast Meria. Maybe just kind of casting it like, you know, to trigger off your Great Henge and such like that. It might come useful for that, you know. So it might be games like that because the cards in here are just all so good. But Meria definitely does pull her weight when the time comes sometimes. So I hope you enjoyed that, and have a great day. Bye.